Welcome to Margot Dreams of Baking. Today I'm going to show you how to make one of the most popular recipes on my website. These spicy Mexican hot chocolate cookies filled with gooey dulce de leche. Stick around. The first step to making these Mexican hot chocolate cookies is to make the homemade dulce de leche. You can use store-bought, but I find the homemade stuff gets a bit thicker and it's easier to handle for the cookies, and it's so easy to make, it's worth doing. So I have a high-sided baking pan, and to that I'm going to put in a little casserole dish that has a lid to cover it. And I'll take my can of sweetened condensed milk and just dump it in. And I'll put the lid on, and I have a kettle of water that I've boiled. I'm going to pour water all around. I want it up to and above the level of the sweetened condensed milk. That'll stop it from burning while it's baking. So now I just need to pop this in the oven. I have my oven preheated to 400 degrees Fahrenheit or 204 Celsius. And I'm going to bake this until it's a nice golden caramel color. And that takes about an hour and 15 minutes to an hour and a half. And I'll show you what it looks like when it's done baking. I just pulled my dulce de leche out of the oven. It's been an hour and 15 minutes and it is perfect. You can see that it's a little dark on the top. That's normal. When you mix it in, it'll start to all come together. And it's a nice and golden color throughout. You'll see that it looks a little bit curdled, and that is very normal for when you do this in the oven like this. So what I'm going to do now is transfer this to a measuring cup and use an immersion blender to blend this up until it's all smooth and it'll have the consistency of peanut butter. I've now transferred my dulce de leche to a measuring cup, and I'm going to use my immersion blender to blend it up. If you don't have an immersion blender, you can use just a regular blender. All right, now you can see that it's nice and smooth. You just want to go until you get it the consistency that you like with no more lumps in it. Now that it's all blended up, I'm going to let it cool completely before the next step. All right, my dulce de leche is now cool enough to handle. So first things first, I'm going to add half a teaspoon of sea salt to the dulce de leche. I like the balance of salt in something sweet like dulce de leche. It just helps balance the sweetness in the cookie. It's still a little warm, so it's still a little liquidy. So what I'm going to do while it's manageable is I'm going to portion out teaspoonfuls of the dulce de leche on this baking sheet, and then I'll freeze it to make it more manageable for filling the cookies later. Generally, I get about 16 to 18 cookies out of this recipe. I'm going to make 20 mounds just in case I happen to end up with more cookies. All right, I've got my mounds all scooped out. I've decided to do 24 just to make it even. Whatever I don't use, I can just put back in with the rest of my leftover dulce de leche. Now this dulce de leche, I can put it in a container and keep it in the fridge or the freezer. And it's wonderful to use on ice cream, things like that. It's really a fantastic thing to have on hand. These are going to go in the freezer for at least an hour to firm up before I use them to fill my cookies. To begin my Mexican hot chocolate cookie dough, I'm going to start with mixing together my dry ingredients. In my bowl, I have 1.5 cups or 210 grams of all-purpose flour. To that, I'm going to add half a teaspoon each of baking soda and salt. I have 3/4 of a cup or 72 grams of cocoa powder. And my spices. Now the reason these are called Mexican hot chocolate cookies is not because there's hot chocolate in them, but because they have some Mexican spices in them. So in my bowl here, I have 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon and 1.25 teaspoons of chipotle powder. That makes them a bit spicy, so if you want to tone down the spice, you can use 3/4 of a teaspoon or anywhere in between. And I'll just whisk them all together. Next, I'm going to mix together some of my wet ingredients. In my measuring cup, I have 1 egg white. To that, I'm going to add half a cup or 118 milliliters of dark corn syrup. Now, if you don't have access to dark corn syrup, you can use light, or if you're in the UK, golden syrup works as well. For those that don't like using any kind of corn syrup, something like honey would work as well. You want something that's an invert sugar, which means that it doesn't crystallize and it helps the cookie to stay soft. I'm also going to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And I'll just whisk them together. Next, to the bowl of my stand mixer, I've added 66 grams each, or 1/3 of a cup each, of granulated sugar and dark brown sugar. To that, I'm going to add 172 grams, or 12 tablespoons of unsalted butter that I have softened. Now I'm going to mix those together until they are light and fluffy. All right, my butter and sugar is all mixed together. Looks nice and fluffy. I'm just going to scrape down my bowl, and then I'll add in the corn syrup mixture. And now I'll just mix those together until combined. That's looking good. So now I'll just scrape down my bowl, and next I'll add in the flour mixture. And I'll just mix that on low speed until combined. You want to scrape down your paddle a couple of times just to make sure that all that flour gets incorporated and not stuck onto the paddle. All right, that looks pretty good. I'm going to take it off the stand mixer and just give it a final stir by hand, as well as add in my final ingredient. The final ingredient that I'm adding to this cookie dough batter is 113 grams or 4 ounces of semi-sweet chocolate that I've chopped fairly finely. You can also use bittersweet chocolate. So I'll just add that to the bowl and stir it in. This is really going to help amp up the chocolate flavor and make it taste like brownies. All right, that's all mixed in. I've decided to do something a little different today than how I normally do these. Normally what I do at this point is put the cookie dough in the fridge to chill for at least an hour to firm up a bit. The thing with this cookie dough is that it never gets completely hard. And it can be quite sticky and messy to work with. So I decided today to see if I could do the same as what I do with the Dulce de Leche and spoon out portions of the balls that I need onto a cookie sheet and put those in the freezer for about half an hour and see if they firm up a bit more and are easier to work with. So what I'm going to do is scoop out portions of 2 tablespoons and make them into little rough balls. I'm not sure if this is going to make a difference or not in terms of how messy my hands get later, but we'll see. All right, so I managed to scoop out 18 portions. I'm going to pop this in the freezer for half an hour and see what it looks like after that. So my cookie dough has been in the freezer for 30 minutes and I just pulled it out. I just tested one to try it out. It's a little on the firm side. I maybe could have done 15 to 20 minutes, but even as I work with it, it's already starting to soften up. So it's still pretty easy to work with. And my Dulce de Leche is quite solid. I can scoop it up and it's a lot easier to manage than it was when it was liquidy. So what I do is I make a bowl shape with the cookie dough and stick my dollop of Dulce de Leche in the center and then just mold the cookie around into a ball. And I want to make sure that it's firmly sealed so that I don't have any Dulce de Leche leaking. There, that's nice, like a nice ball of Play-Doh almost is what it looks like. So I have a mixture that I've made that is 66 grams or 1/3 cup of granulated sugar, 3/4 of a teaspoon of cinnamon, and 1/4 teaspoon of chipotle powder. Now this makes more than you need, but you can save it. I save this in the cupboard between times that I bake the cookies and reuse it. So I'm just going to roll this around to get it coated in the sugar mixture. And I can bake 8 cookies per sheet. Just for an extra little bit of saltiness, which I always love with chocolate and Dulce de Leche, I'm also going to sprinkle a few grains of sea salt over top. Now you can see that this is still quite firm to work with. But I think it's better than the other way where it's really, really sticky and gets all over my hands when I'm working with it. You just have to mold it a little bit and then it's fine. You do want to make sure that it's completely sealed. I'm finding parts where a little bit of dulce de leche was coming out, so I'm working to make sure that it's fully sealed before I put it in. So I'm going to continue doing the rest of this cookie sheet, which is 8 cookies per sheet, and I'll bake these at 375 degrees or 190 Celsius for 10 to 11 minutes until they look firm on the top. I'll show you what it's like when they're all baked. My first batch of cookies are baked and they smell amazing. I'm going to let these sit on the pan for 10 minutes to firm up before I move them to the cooling rack to cool completely. My cookies are now all baked and cooled, and it's time to try one. I'm going to try and break it open in the middle and see if I can show you the gooey dulce de leche in the center. It's hard to tell, but there is a line there. The nice thing about the dulce de leche is that it doesn't harden, so it stays gooey the whole time. And it's really nice texture in the middle of this cookie. So now I finally get a taste test. These are flavors that I absolutely love. The cookie tastes like a brownie in cookie form. It's got a little hint of spice, but it's not overly spicy. You can always tone it down, as I mentioned earlier, if you don't like too much spice. And the creamy, nutty flavored dulce de leche just matches so perfectly with the chocolate. The little hint of salt on top helps to balance any sweetness and brings out the chocolate flavors as well. These are one of my favorite cookie recipes and the most popular one on my website. I hope you try it.
Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please remember to like and subscribe to my channel and check out my playlist for more videos.